There. There we go.
I think it's two of them. There's a,
All right.
okay, so you're gonna go, there's green,
My pictures. Okay.
No.
Screen, yeah.
and you could just leave it on one participant at a time,
Okay.
okay? And then
That's sausage.
you said COVID,
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah,
That's
that's
fine.
fine.
I can be where they can see. So he's now ready to do it.
he should be, let me see.
Then I need to go on mute though here, right? So there's no echo.
Okay.
Turn down your,
Hit mute on yours.
oh, he's muted, he just has to. Okay,
Okay.
you have to hit complete mute. Hello. Hello, okay, you have to hit F.
Okay, how about taking it off?
Huh? To get it off, when you leave, it should automatically turn off, but look, hit FN and this. So FN activates all your white buttons.
Oh, you're right.
Okay.
And so now all I need to do is hit share screen, right?
And you
then
hit screen, okay,
I guess,
yep. Let me check.
see if it shows up on yours. Good. Say again.
You can just ask Doug if it's sharing.
Okay.
Just make sure, just to confirm that.
All right. Just yell at me if it stops sharing. All right.
I don't have to do that. And you'll know how many people are on.
Yeah, I don't see that yet.
You don't have to bring them in.
Okay.
You'll see that right here. Kevin.
Yeah, if you show me, we use Microsoft Teams. And
So,
The seller had it supposedly. Before they moved out. There's not really, it's not marketed areas that have the smell. That is-
so right now, it is just you and Doug in here.
Okay.
Okay,
And there's a lane.
somebody else is doing.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Playlist. And then you scroll down and say state national control.
But
I remember her saying like stay in the car. Before.
It had like.
Right, there we go. We got it.
I think we got a lane on.
I don't think it's like soaked into.
Whenever you're ready.
There was no stain.
All right.
I don't.
No, I'll take over. All right, we're gonna get started here.
Kevin, with the more you think.
Hey, guys, I know most of you here are in the room. I see Elaine is online. Maybe we'll get some more. And Shauna or Shana? Shauna, nice to meet you. So as Doug introduced, Kevin Badger, I'm a loan originator with the Mortgage Link. And so today I'm going to present some slides to just go through Mortgage 101, as we call it. So we've got 3 or 4 seasoned realtors in here. We've got a number of likely good and painful experiences, and some dealing with, closing loans and for buyers and such. So I would just invite the experienced folks. If I don't have all the answers, and you'll see in here somewhere in the brief, I call every mortgage like a snowflake. They're all a little different, So as we're going through different, I would invite the seasoned realtors in here who've got a number of closes on their belts to bring up specific experiences, and whether I've got, good, bad, and ugly, so we can kind of draw out some of those things. But so we'll get started with that. So just real quick, as a caveat, this isn't to make you a loan originator. It's not a course. This is just to familiarize you with some of the terminology and some of the basic rules that we go by. And really, before we started, I was talking with Doug and Lola and Dave, really, I think a big part of our role as a loan originator, once the process gets started, is communication to your customer from our side, because it is a stressful, buying a home could be a stressful thing if the communication isn't well. Namely, if you have never tried to do your own personal mortgage through somebody like Rocket or some of those big, mortgage firms that they don't communicate well, it can be very stressful. So I'm going to take you through this, but again, this isn't going to be, if you ask me a real technical question, either I don't know or there's more research to be done, I'll take the question down and get back to you afterwards. So, all right, here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to define what a mortgage is. And again, this is a 101. So I'll try to keep the real basics, not to insult your intelligence. We'll talk about the lending process to a certain extent so that you guys understand when you turn over the loan and the buying experience to your loan originator, what's happening behind the scenes. Because you won't see 99% of it, you won't see. It just happens. And then the approval process, we're going to talk about costs involved in mortgage and then different mortgages and types. So real basic, mortgage is a loan that the real estate is used as collateral. So that'll come up kind of big when we talk about appraisals here, and we'll hit on experiences on hopefully one of my realtors here. I haven't had this, has had an experience where appraisal has come in under the agreed upon price, because that's a little tricky situation. But mortgages, it's the land and the home is built as the collateral that the borrower goes in agreement with the lender. And I, as the loan originator, am the paid point of contact to help the process of the purchase of the home. So I've got legal responsibilities that you as realtors don't have, and follow regulations that you don't have, and you follow things and do things that I don't know about. So I say that as almost sometimes when people are going into buying a house or whatever, and they're like, I'm going to do it without a realtor. I'm like, well, good luck. Good luck. Or I'm going to, so anyway. All right. So this slide's a kind of a good one slider. And if there's any, this is probably something as when we get done, I'll share these slides with you. You might already have some of them. But this 6-step process this is the life of the closing. Now, I will say, as far as the mortgage link goes, we pride ourselves on closing within 21 days, or the agreed upon closing day. Barring any major problems that are outside of our control, like a slow appraisal and potentially a VA loan, which is typical for VA loan. But so let's start off with step one, the pre-qualification, pre-approval, pre-qualification, same. So we were talking about this. One of the things that I think that the realtors that I've been working with is one of my roles is to help make sure that early on that the realtor isn't, I say, chasing smoke, isn't wasting time, because time is your most valuable resource. We were having a conversation before you got in here, Shauna, that, should you ever show a home without a pre-qualification? And it was 4 out of 5 said, I will never do that. Lola says she's done it once or twice or whatever, shown a home without a pre-qualification. But fundamentally, having that pre-qualification in your hand as you're showing gives you confidence as a real estate agent that you're not wasting your Saturday, your Sunday, your Monday, your phone calls at night, whatever, on people who I could tell you in a 15-minute phone call aren't going to qualify, because for various reasons, which we'll get into. So as you can see on the first line of the first step of the 6-step process on this slide, it says what? Speak with a loan officer. Okay, so if you have somebody, whether it be a Zillow lead or, however or a friend calls you, or somebody calls you out of nowhere and says, I saw your name online and I'm interested in buying a house. Perfect. You have some casual conversation. I got a slide here. The next slide's going to talk about things that I think y'all should kind of keep in mind when you're having your casual conversations. But one of the early things is to introduce them to your lender of choice. Somebody like me, somebody, that, whatever. I mean, I would hope you would call me or the Mortgage Link, but, you talk to them first and get them introduced. And I will tell you, for those, that are working with me, I would say it's typically a text introduction. It's like, hey, this is Maggie. Maggie's writing Bob, who called her, and says, hey, Bob, I wanted to introduce you to Kevin Badger. He's loan officer with the Mortgage Link. Want to get y'all talking. So at that point, I'll respond and say, Bob, nice to meet you. I'll give you a call. Let's set up a time today or tomorrow to have a 15-minute phone call. And that 15-minute phone call, I can get out of them and glean from them the information I need to tell you whether or not, yeah, it's a pretty good lead here, or, you know, we might have some work to do.
Just, you know, I put Kevin's number on GroupMe just now.
So, you know, what does that phone call look like? Now, I will tell you, you're kind of left out of this process. You're not actually allowed to be in this process because of the details that I'm going to actually be asking the person. And if they know you, then I will always say, feel free. I need to get permission from the client to allow me to either tell you the details of their financial situation or let you be on the phone call. It's up to them. If they let you be on, then you can be as nosy as you want and ask me, as long as I get permission. Doesn't have to be anything formal. It could be, hey, I'll give you verbal permission. That's fine. But I like to tell them early on, introduce myself, give a little background of my history. I'm a veteran and I've been doing loans for about 2.5, 3 years now, so on and so forth. And then do that small talk. But then then we'll quickly go into this next section that I'm going to talk about, and I'll do an evaluation of their assets. And I'm actually doing, while I'm talking to them, doing a what I call a mini app that we can start an application. So many applications done, we run. Now here's a question that I would offer to you. If it's a little sketchy, we can run a soft credit pool in this process. Or if they're like looking good, the numbers are good, they're really confident, they're ready to buy. You know, let's say in one scenario, they think they tell you, Credit Karma tells me I've got a 615 credit score. You know, we'll talk about this in a little more detail, but I will tell you the reality is that's probably more like a 560, you know, on a full credit pool. But I can do a soft credit pool to get not a full pre-qualification, but to get a better sense without hurting the client. Because when I pull hard credit pull, it's going to take down their credit score a little bit temporarily. Okay, but if they're like gung-ho, their numbers verbally look pretty good, then we'll go ahead. And the cost is different to us, the mortgage lending. So if we're not real sure, they're not real sure. Like I had a client who wasn't real sure he wanted to buy. Well, let's do a soft pull. It doesn't cost as much, and we can get a sense of whether or not you're going to qualify. So. And again, step 2 through 6 happens behind the scenes. Y'all won't see them. I will, if you're working with me, I'll be able to tell you, hey, the title's ordered, the appraisal's ordered, you know, the verifications ordered, our processor is going through it. We're about halfway through and we're on day 4. Everything looks good. So the message from you to client is everything looks good. I'm talking to your client almost every day is how I like to do business, even if it's I give them a phone call and just say, hey, Bob, heads up. I just want to let you know that everything's on track. There's no issues. Or, hey, Bob, you still owe me that W-2. You remember? I need that W-2 uploaded into our file that we talked about. Oh, yeah, we'll get it. They're like, I'm kind of on hold, Bob, until you do that type thing. So I like to talk to the clients once a day, keep them informed on where we're at. And I'll even ask them, I'll just say, do you want me to call you every day? Because some are like, no, just call me if anything changes. So to me, one of the biggest things is communication from both y'all's side for sure, but our side as well. Because I don't know about you, but in my first marriage, my wife, my ex-wife she worried a lot, let's say it that way. And doing a loan was I think one of those stressful things for life. And I had a good loan officer who talked to us almost daily. We're on track. You owe us this or whatever. Okay, so any questions on this slide? I mean, there's a lot of technicalities, you know, but this is all stuff that's happening in the really about the first 10 days. You know, and as long as we're just telling you it's on track, you don't really need to worry about this. This is what we do. Our team, it's what we do. Okay, moving on. All right, Doug talks about this a lot when I sit in the back most times and read this. How do you casually talk to a client to get information that's going to detail to you whether or not, you know, A, for your sake, is this worth my time? Is this something that is worth even pushing through? And I came across this thing. I'm not going to take credit for it. I came across this thing on an online, you know, podcast thing, and the guy had, and it just worked for me. It helped me remember, but it's an acronym called PAIL: Property, Assets, Income, and Liabilities. So fundamentally, a lot of these questions are what the financial doctor, the loan originator is going to be asking. But the reason I like this slide and I wanted to make this slide is that little green bullet way at the top is, should a realtor get a sense of these early on? And how do you do that? Well, Doug talks about it all the time. Hey, what do you do for a living? Like that is a real specific personal question that you have to read whether or not they want to talk about it. But like I'm a doctor, like, oh, ding, like, all right, how long have you been a doctor? Ding. Second question, because we liked, how many years do we like? 2 minimum. Okay. Like, oh, really? You've only been a doctor for a year. What'd you do before that? I was in med school. Okay. He'll get away with that. Or, hey, I work for company X. Well, how long have you been doing that? I've been doing that for a year and a half. What'd you do before that? Oh, I worked for another company that's competition. Okay. That's good. Dang. He or she's been working. Let me, hold on. This Zoom is but this is a list of questions. This is just kind of a cheat sheet. It's not, completely inclusive of everything, anything, but if you go down the acronym, what kind of property are they looking for? Is it a primary home? Is it a secondary home? Is it an investment? Is it a duplex? Is it a triplex? Who is the seller? Is it a flip house? These things, where is the property? Is it rural? Is it something where USDA loan might come in handy? You might be able to do it. From an assets, need to verify enough money to put closed. This is where you're not going to how do you get it out? If you're hanging out at a country club, you maybe make an assumption or whatever, but some of these things are things that we're going to get to, but like an income, asking about, their background, oh, you went to college. Oh, you got a master's degree. Oh, really? That's cool. Where'd you go? Oh man, I'm a Longhorn fan, and Doug's always talking this is how you can get around and get some of this information very casually. And like Doug says, I like what you say when you say people love talking about themselves. They really do. If it's done in a way that's not invasive, then they'll tell you all about their college experience and, how long they worked with the former company and what role they had and, that sort of thing. So I bring these things up, so liabilities, just some of these things we're going to go over here. It's not just about credit cards, school loans, credit cards. Are the school loans deferred? Are there any foreclosures or bankruptcies? And I don't know if Maggie's on here, but she goes on some sort of background check forewarns, and it shows some things. Yeah, it'll show some things. So I'm not an expert on that, but I'm like, hey, that's good to know early on. It brings up to me and I give Maggie credit because I've just been working with her, but she called me. She's gotten significantly more experience over the last few months. It's really cool to watch where she'll call me. It's like, here's the deal. They're a doctor. They live here. They're moving here in this day. She's got this information. I haven't even talked to the customer.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. It's great. So,
one thing, just I'll talk real
yeah,
quick.
please.
One thing that I've started doing, and I play pickleball every night, y'all know that. I have a really good group of guys that I'm probably working with them, but I don't talk about it. But whenever I see somebody, I'm like, hey, Dave, what's your story? And I kind of almost like put them in a corner. I'm like, so what's your story, man? I'm Doug, and I mean, he'll be sitting on a bench waiting to go in to play pickleball. I'm like, hey, I've met you before. I'm Doug, and everybody knows me in my gym now. So, but I found that just saying, hey, what's your story? Well, that's so open-ended. And like, oh, I go to UTD. I'm like, oh, okay, what are you, in an apartment or we live with your parents? And I just I'm very inquisitive. I get it from my sister. We're both we can interrogate somebody. But I mean, I got one guy, he already told me he makes $240,000 a year. And I played in a tournament with him, and we become really close friends. I invite him to family events because he's single. He's an Indian. And his name is AD. And I once asked him, what is your name? And he's like, it's Abhijit. And so I made sure that I could pronounce it. And I said, would you rather me introduce you? My friend is AD or Abhijit? And he's like, I'd love it if you introduced me as Abhijit. He's like, most people can't pronounce it. So what I had to do is go Abhijit, like a Jeep, and just make it Jeet. And when I introduce him, you can see he smiles, knowing that it's his name, not an initial. So those are small things that you can do, but I can just tell you that if you practice on just your kids' friends, hey, what's your story, Cannon? oh, I'm playing, I mean, it gives you practice on how to just simply say that, like, hey, what's your story? What's your deal? What's going on? You know,
Mhm,
and that leads into,
mhm.
you know, these types of things. Now, obviously, you don't want to ask about anybody's debt or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's what Kevin's talking about.
Yeah.
The main thing is sell a little sizzle, get him cell phone
Mhm.
hooked up, and boom, you're golden, because he's gonna get back with you and say, you're ready to lock and load, and then you do a, you know, search in the MLS, and next thing you know, you're selling properties.
And on that phone call, that first phone call that I make, I swear by, I tell people, I will take as long as you want, but I can get through this in 15 minutes and we can be like lightning round and I'll have a good idea whether or not, you know, this is going to work or it's not going to work, you know, without even doing the digital underwriting and all the stuff that our formal processes are. So, all right. So this is just kind of a cool little, you know, pale. If you think about that this is actually the stuff that we're going to be analyzing to get qualified. So if you have these sorts of things in the back of your head as you're on showings or, you know, you're at a listing and you're small talk about stuff that'll pay you money. How about that? You know, let's see if this is going to let me. There we go. Okay. I'll try not to, I'll try to hit high points here just because some of this is going to be redundant. You know, we're going to be looking at things like, you know, stable, adequate income. Okay. I mean, what does adequate mean? Well, it depends. If you make $40,000 a year and you're looking to buy a $500,000 house, it's probably not going to be adequate. You know, and that's an extreme, but you know, that's, you know, there is a real, you know, like my leads I've had over the past few months, I will tell you, I've had more non-qualifications than I have had qualifications recently, you know, and I don't know what's happening. I can't give you a professional opinion why, but it just, you know, it's either they're asking for too much or they've got their DTI, which we'll talk about, is too high. But job stability, we talked about that. 2 years, keep that in mind. If you've got 2 years of job stability, then that's a good thing.
Is it also a good idea, like when somebody says they're a fireman or a police officer or a teacher, to ask them if they have a probationary period? Because like if they're 5 months in a W-2 job with no probation, that's good. But if they have probation. That's good. And it's also, you know, besides the firefighters and such, it's also, it doesn't hurt somebody to be in school either. Now they'll need to show like a secured job, you know, contract type thing. So it's not an end all be all. Like there are some things that we can get around. So it's not like 2 years or nothing, no deal. I mean, it's our job to find the loan for them. And one of the things I like to encourage is like, I'm on their team. I'm on your team. We're not an obstacle. We're your bridge to get it done. And if it's, and I like to say, and I'll get to you, I like to say it's not, no, sometimes it's not right now. You know, so go ahead, Pat.
So when it comes to job stability,
Mhm.
what if they're not a W-2?
And they
have their own business.
They have their own business. That's fine. That's fine as well. We'll look at their tax returns for their businesses. And in some cases, they don't pay themselves. And so we look at those tax returns. In some cases, they do pay themselves as W-2 employees.
Okay.
So we just look at different forms, and, you know, the 1099 contractors, you know, are, you know, this goes back to my original comment of like every single deal is unique in some capacity. There's very few that, you know, that walk in the door, they make enough money, their debt to income's good, they're looking for a house in the right area, and boy, 21 days later, we've got them in a house, and it's just been smooth as silk. They've all got kind of each individual rubs. So in fact, I've had more recently of people who have their own businesses, and that's fine, but we have to look at their business tax returns. And I had to build, with one I did that closed in January, I had to actually build him a P&L. He didn't have a P&L for his business, but I helped him build a P&L for his business to show what his profitability was in his business. So that sort of thing. Did that answer your question, Pat? Okay. So history dictates future. All right. Credit score. So I kind of hit on one thing. I mean, it gives this is one of the primary things that drives us to whether or not somebody's going to pre-qualify or not, fundamentally. There's certain, for each different type of loan, there's certain levels that are minimums. They do fluctuate here and there. And we'll get to kind of the numbers, but it gives an idea of there's a terminology in the mortgage world called ability to repay. So there's, your credit score shows your history, your debt to income shows your current. So if you think about it that way. So I've got young people, and you'll see this too, that have zero credit, and you're not going to qualify with zero. I mean, they weren't taught to have a credit card. They were taught to pay everything in cash, and it's going to take them time to build credit up.
In that instance, how long would it take somebody, like if they've been with the same job for 2 years
Yeah.
and they just don't have credits to start with?
How long?
I'm not in the instance, but I'm.
No. I don't know like how to put a number on that. I mean, I know that, from a credit score perspective, we have the Mortgage Link has a third party credit bureau type place that I think the number is like there's 13 in the United States that are fully credentialed, and we use one of them because there's a million of them out there. If you Google credit repair, and people can get burned, they can waste money. So I would
think
recommend.
what Brooks was saying is like, get a credit card.
Yeah, it is. It's get a credit card. It's pay your credit card. It's how
but
long is it?
not so much of find something big, almost like a candy bar, you pay it off.
That's what you would suggest for them?
Well, I
Like
would
to
suggest,
start-
Yeah.
you call
Get a
in,
credit card.
you call in to the lender to get,
Okay.
like my son, he's in town this weekend and he's down in Houston. He makes about 50 grand a year. And last night on the way to Torchy's, we ate there last night also for dinner. He was like, I was like, we'll help you with your down payment. I'll use my commission towards your, and he was like, oh, I just want to always pay cash for everything. I'm like, that's not gonna happen. But he doesn't have a credit card and he's 25.
Yeah.
Just because he got some trouble
Mhm.
and he just wants to, and I'm like, we need to get you a credit card. I'll co-sign on it or something just for you to,
Get started.
yeah, just to do
Mhm.
something.
Well, and I had this actually on my browser because I knew it was going to come up. So I
Oh, yeah.
wanted to speak specifically. You can't see it, but I mean, Google is a magical thing, right? Right. We all know that. So I looked up like, how is a FICO credit score calculated? And so specifically 35% is towards payment history, 30% is amount owed, length of credit history, new credit, and credit mix, 10% in each of those. So there's 3 different credit bureaus that we pull from. We take the medium score, but the fundamental is it's payment history, how long you've had credit, how much credit you use, that sort of thing. So it's not super complicated, but it's if somebody, and it is, if I can get back to my PowerPoint, there it is.
I had a situation where my client was applying for a lease home
Mhm.
and her credit score was only at 520, but she needed to be at 540 to get approved. I
Mhm.
had her sign up for Experian and do like a boost, but it just, I don't,
Well,
I'm not an expert, so I
Yeah.
referred her out to somebody.
Yeah. And I think getting a credit card and, putting your groceries on your credit card and paying them down every month, get a credit card for I tell my kids, when they got out of college, when they were in college, get a credit card and put $50 down on it, and money, you've got, you're going to spend it either way, but pay it off every month.
Yeah,
And
they had a car, it was our son, he paid cash for his car, so he didn't even have that as revolving debt. But that would have counted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But, if you don't have revolving debt as a credit card or student loan, then, and you're young, you gotta get a credit card.
And
So
For my
you're,
son on my credit card.
yeah, and that's a
And
good
I didn't
idea.
give him the card, but he's getting my payment history. So when he got his first apartment at 18, he had a 17.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Can you use credit scores that way? Like if somebody is like on somebody
Mhm.
else's
So he's
card?
on my Amex. So
Yeah.
And- and
Can you count that as their credit option?
I don't think he does. He gets my credit. With
And
my
it
card.
affects the credit.
It could affect
It,
his-
yeah, I'm not sure.
If he doesn't
I'm not
get
gonna,
the
I-
bills-
If he didn't have.
here's what I say. You are authorized 1 free credit report a year.
Yeah.
Every American. And I always have you gone and Google, remember Uncle Google,
Mhm.
free credit report. And it's the first thing that pops up. And I forget, it's like freecreditreport.com and it pulls up the 3 and it'll show you. And if it shows 0, then time to go get a credit card.
And then 14, 15, he didn't have them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
some of
Yeah, please.
some of those credit restoration, so credit repair, they have those old accounts that sometimes they have to add on as authorized so they can boost their credit right away.
Okay,
So that's for lending, but on some of them, so.
That's right.
So that could actually help.
Perfect.
okay, that's good to know.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, we're gonna go through an actual exercise here in a minute, but debt to income ratio, it's one of the, besides credit report, it is exactly what it says, debt divided by income. Okay, so, and, that's one of the prime, that goes back to that concept of ability to pay back, ability to repay. So that's kind of, your credit score is kind of your past and your debt to income is kind of your current. And we look at, and I'll take you through in about a slide, in fact, is a very simple example, but fundamentally just keep the number at about 40%, 40 to 50%, and you're going to be okay. The lower, the better, because it just means you make enough to pay back your current bills. Okay. And then, it seems kind of simple, that second to last bullet, but is the number one is if it's on the higher end, they can either lower it by paying off debt or getting more income. Okay, so, again, that's one of the initial things we look at, credit score, debt to income ratio.
Kevin, when
Yes,
you look
ma'am.
at the debt, you're looking at credit card debt,
Perfect question.
are you looking at, student loan debt? Are you
Yes.
looking at,
So here, perfect question. I'm gonna go to this little thing here real quick and then I'll answer you I'll answer your question because this is the little simple exercise. So credit card, rotating debt, like credit card debt, school loans, if they're not in deferral. So that's a key question that I'll ask if they say, it's all going to pop up on their credit report. I will ask them about their debts. Most of the time people aren't not honest. They just forget about something that might be on their credit score. So when I pull their credit, it's going to show up anyway. Things that are not on there, your electric bill, your groceries, your cable, your day-to-day stuff is not on there. Anything that you've had to apply for, kind of simple, credit cards, any sort of loan, school loan, alimony, child support, those things go into it. But your day-to-day debts, which is why you can't take the debt to income ratio too high because you still actually have to eat. And you got to go to.
Housing costs, is housing
Yep,
costs?
yep, we're gonna talk about that. Yep, and y'all are gonna go see Barbie this weekend. That's gonna cost you $50.
Well, no,
People are gonna
it's
go
a
entertain
Zoom. I
themselves
just wanted to
and
connect.
play pickleball, and that costs
See our
money.
audience.
So here's a very simple example, if you guys can see on the screen. So you make $120,000 a year, so you have $10,000 a month. You've got $200 a month in credit cards, auto loan of $500 a month, and your new house payment is $2,000 a month. So we've got two different ratios. You got front end and back end ratio. The front ratio is just the new house payment divided by your income. So we don't use that.
And you don't want it to exceed
We
0.28, right?
we don't really use that
Okay.
because it doesn't, because again, this one's real simple.
They're just using one ratio.
Yeah. The back end ratio, and I don't even know why we even put the front end ratio, because the back end is the one that actually is going to show the reality. So if you look at the last line on this slide, the back end ratio is your $2,000 new home cost per month plus your $700 in debt. So it's $2,700 divided by 10,000 a month, which gives you 27. I will tell you we'll get to a kind of there's a money slide at the end of this where it's got all the different types of loans, where it's got what the credit scores are right now, give or take. And
So
again,
that was 27, what, you go as high as what,
I-
41?
40 to 50, you're feeling pretty comfortable. When you get above 50, it starts to get harder. There's always mitigating circumstances. We'll see if we can do different things, but I'd say 40 to 50%, you probably, even though you're on the high end, you are on a little bit higher risk. So that higher risk, whether it be credit score or debt to income ratio, implies not as good of interest rates.
So the same
Because you're a
thing,
higher.
that 38.
Yeah,
So
if you're
they
40 and
say
below,
that
your
38.
goal. Yeah, you're full 40 and below, your goal.
Here's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would use 40 because it's all zeros. It's
Mhm.
easy.
Mhm.
And the way I dumb it down, because I'm not that smart, I meet somebody and I'm like, hey, how you doing, Ariel? What do you do? What's your story? Oh, I'm blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm, I just keep asking you, talk. At some point, you're like, what do you do, Doug? I'm like, oh, I'm a realtor. Oh, must be a God thing. I'm looking at buying a home. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, I can give you a lender. I can kind of tell you tonight, ballpark of what your payment would be.
Mhm.
What do you make a year? Oh, I make 100 grand. I make 120 a year. Oh, okay, well, in my head, I already know that's 10,000, right? And I go, oh, what's 4 times 10? It's 4. It's 4,000. If you said you had no debt, you could have a $4,000 payment. If you said you had $2,000 worth of debt, you could have a $2,000 payment.
Yep.
If you said you had $3,000 worth of debt, you can have a $1,000 payment. The reason why the beauty of the 1 ratio is that you don't have to calculate anymore. And if you make it 40, whether it's 40 or 50, 40 is perfect because it's easy. If you make 5 grand a month, 5 times 4 is 20. That's 2,000. Oh, I have no debt. Oh, you can have a payment of 2,000. And then, and then you get it, and then at least like that's realistic in our market. But if somebody goes, I make 2 grand, well, 4 times 2 is 8. So that's an $800 payment. And
Mhm.
you're like, well, shit, we need to be looking at apartments or
Yeah,
something.
I was
like-
gonna say, I don't know,
mean, they ain't
I don't know where you're
have
gonna find
either.
that in Dallas.
Yeah, but that's why you don't, so then if somebody gets excited, like, oh, that's like,
That's
if,
not bad.
if you're at about 2,500 to 2 grand or 3,000 on taking 40% of their monthly income, hook him up all day long with them.
Now, income could be other, I
Yeah,
kind of,
exactly.
could be other forms of income as well, right? So if it's, say, somebody's receiving child support, that's income. If you got some sort, so
Alimony?
alimony is income. It's also a liability depending on who's paying, on the other end.
Okay.
So if you're receiving those are income. If alimony is paying or child support paying, that is a liability. So depends, he or she, doesn't matter, in this world.
And a little weird, only because I've been married, but.
And again, I throw this caveat out there. This is information for just background, like,
Yeah.
and if I don't have permission to tell you anything, if the person hasn't told me, I can say things like debt to income looks fine. Or debt to income might be a little high, we're working on it. But I can't tell you unless the realtor tells me. It tells me,
Yeah, like
you
we're
can
gonna
tell the
go with
realtor,
it.
but
Yeah.
I can tell y'all, hey, we're on track, it's fine.
And the only thing I'll mention, because I've been divorced, is that when you see somebody my age, like in their 50s, female or male that's getting child support, it's probably good to say, hey, how old are your kids? Because if they say 18, it could be that that's about to cut off in a year, and under a year, it won't count as a debt or income anymore. So that's, but if they just got divorced and their kids are 5 and 6, they're gonna have that as qualifying income for a long time. So I think that's also pretty fair,
Mhm. That's right. That's right. Next slide, I got the approval process, appraisal of the property. So, back to that slide where I talked about the 6 steps. As soon as there's a contract, we're putting an order for an appraisal in. I mean, that day, especially on VA loans, because VA loans, no, the appraisals are slowest
Oh, really?
on the VA loan. Yeah, and the only non-professional answer on that is there's probably a limited number of appraisers that are government approved
Mhm.
to, any appraiser could, like a conventional, right? So we talked about, the very simple definition of what's a mortgage and the land in the house being a, collateral. So from our senior realtors out here who've closed a bunch, has anybody had one where an appraisal came under the agreed upon price? And can y'all talk about what y'all did, what y'all had to do, because I will tell you that from a lender perspective, we'll only lend up to the appraisal price. So now there's a shortage, 5 grand, call it. Somebody's got to come up with that 5 grand, or it's got to be negotiated down, that sort of thing. So I saw this and I think it'd be a good example.
We all have, but yesterday, just to give you real life, Tony, she's in her office. She's writing an offer right now, and the list price is $325. They're gonna go in at $350, and it's conventional. And she wanted to know, hey, just remind me one more time, what would happen if the home appraised for $300? And I said, well, if you write up the offer at 350, I don't really care what the list price is because we don't care anymore. And it gets executed at 350 and appraised for 300. I go, the lender would have approved your client on a loan to value, let's say 90% loan to value. And that means 90% of the sales price that they're gonna get a loan. So if it appraises lower, it's still gonna be 90%, but the sales price is still 350. Because that's contractually obligation, the obligation is 350, but it appraised less. So if the lender said, hey, I can't approve them at 90% at 300, because even though the contract price is 350, they have to bring an additional 50,000. So then he would send a letter to you that said the buyer no longer qualifies. You send it to the other agent. You're gonna still have to get a release of earnest money. Unfortunately, both parties sign that. And if the seller gets pissed, it doesn't sign it, your earnest money is gonna be probably tied up at the title company. Now, her other option was to use a what addendum? Appraisal addendum. And she wanted to she's been a late agent for a while and she's great. It's just that we don't use this all the time. So you do want to make sure you get those correct. There's 3 paragraphs on the appraisal addendum. The first paragraph, I told her yesterday exactly this. I go, the way I'd explain it to your buyer is so here's the deal. The home just got listed the day before yesterday and they're doing an open house this weekend. And she said to the listing agent, what would it take for you to scratch the open house and we just get this home and put it down? They go 350. Well, it's listed at 325. So the listing agent didn't say 350 in an appraisal waiver, but that's what they meant. Because 350 without appraisal waiver doesn't mean shit.
Right.
So 350 with the appraisal waiver means they want paragraph 1 marked. And the way I told her to explain it is the way I've told you for 3 years, is that I said, tell your buyer, hey, Ariel, if the home appraises for $1,
Or you're gonna have to pay it.
you gotta bring $349,999 to closing. Can you do it? I want the home. Okay, well then mark paragraph 1. If Ariel goes, I can only probably bring up an extra 10, so if the home appraiser at 340, I could do it. Well, then in paragraph 2 or 3, you put 340.
It's less appealing to the seller.
And the third paragraph is always gonna protect your buyer the most, because you don't need a release of earnest money. It's pre-printed that the earnest money goes back. So there's only 3 paragraphs. The first one, completely seller, great day.
Pro seller. Yeah.
Yeah, pro seller for sure. That's all we marked 3 years ago. Every offer had paragraph 1 marked or you didn't get it. Today, if you want to make it to where you're going to get it, you're going to still mark it, even if the market has become more balanced. And you just want to know that if you mark paragraph 3, you've got to put a figure in there that if it appraised for less than, the buyer gets to walk. And so a lot of sellers aren't going to want that, even in this market that's become more balanced, if it's a good home. And you'll know it's a good home when you look at it. It's not rocket science. It means the backyard has some shade, it's good plan, beautiful walking up.
Eastward facing.
Cold, yeah, east, something like that. So anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that's good. That's exactly what conversation I was hoping to get out of it, because because it's kind of simple on our end. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
and I
not
don't
good.
charge you.
It's not good from from us. There's a negotiation that goes back to the real estate agent to say, y'all gotta go figure this out.
Yeah.
I
So,
think that's why it's important to tell your client, like, hey, if you want to offer on this one, this is what we have to put. You still have to work out with your lender. We're gonna talk to them, and then you have to have this amount of cash.
and y'all have the ability to look at comps and know when a bid's way out of market, and y'all, we did that. I think you were working with Almo and me on getting comps, down in the Houston area this past week. So, all right, computer, go ahead. Let's try this way.
And just real quick on
Yeah.
appraisal as we move, remember the appraiser doesn't work for the buyer. The appraiser works for the lender, even though the buyer pays for it. So when a buyer goes, they represent me, the appraiser represented me, and I think they valued it too high. Well, they didn't, if it goes above, the appraiser goes above, that's golden. That means you have some built-in equity. But if it's below, you just got to remember when the buyer goes, if the buyer ever says anything like, well, that appraiser, I paid for him. Well, you pay for him, but the lender's the one that wants to make sure the value is at least the loan amount or the sales price, because if you go into default, they got to put it on the market again. And so, that's an important aspect to understand is that even though the buyer pays the appraisal, the appraiser actually works for the lender, even though they don't have a relationship with the lender.
And if the buyer doesn't like the appraisal, they can also pay for a second one, which
Yeah.
very rarely happens, but if they just are like, we want this house,
Yeah,
it doesn't
barely,
make any
really
sense.
changes anything.
Yeah, they can.
Or your lender can help you challenge appraisal.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've actually done that twice.
That's
the
right.
lender
How'd it
can
work
pay
out?
for a
I've
second
been able to
one.
get it raised by 17K and 10K.
Oh, good.
And the price can be negotiated down, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
But
there's,
you gotta find comps. The thing is, a lot of times, if you're willing to look, there are comps, because the time between they appraise and the time that you're challenging,
Time's gone by.
something else has gone off the market.
Yeah.
it was interesting to do the research on it. It's like, what happens if a market actually jumps up way high super fast and the comps aren't caught up with it?
That was 2 years ago.
You know, right, exactly. So, all good. So I'm gonna keep moving. So I'm gonna kind of hit and stick and move here a little bit to a certain extent. It does cost money to close loans. This surprises people. So part of one of the things that we asked for in our initial conversation is how much do they have in savings, because you actually have to bring money to table. There's an escrow deposit you got to put down early on. The down payment, we're going to go through a couple different loans here in a second to kind of talk down payments. Closing costs, those are your hard money costs. They're listed here not in total, but lender fees, title fees, taxes, appraisal fees, and more. And then prepaid items, typically your first year's worth of your insurance is paid for at closing, and your escrows, which is typically a prorated amount for the time of the month that you close to the end of the month. So any questions on that? I say that because sometimes people get really pissed when you go, oh, and also you need to bring $12,000 to close. And you're like, what? Like, I don't want to pay money.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's what the VA.
That's right. That's right. We were going to talk about that here in a second. So this is an example of kind of closing costs. So I'll just kind of run through it. So again, we're going to talk about the different types of loans, but this is a conventional purchase of $230,000. The buyer only wants to put 5% down. So that's that $11,500. The loan amount is now $218,500 because of that down payment. So if you go down to the sections, the second portion on the left side of this slide, or I'm sorry, the third portion, it's the principal and interest. So there's a term called PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that comprises the monthly payment. Okay, so the $1,361 is just your principal and interest on the $218,500. And then mortgage insurance, we're going to touch on real quick. But look at this, when people say, I don't want to pay mortgage insurance, $66 a month in this scenario, as opposed to having to come up with another $30,000 to get to 20%. So it allows, mortgage insurance is a good thing. It allows people that don't have the amount of money to put for a down payment on a conventional. It allows them to go ahead and purchase a home earlier than they probably could at a 20% rate. So then you got your taxes, your insurance. So your total payment is now estimated at $1,999. And then you've got your closing fees, your lender fees at $3,865, $650 for appraisal, title. Some of this, you guys are good salesmen. You get some of your sellers to pay for some of this, and that helps your buyer out, on the buyer side. So on the right side, just a summary. So your down payment is $11,500, and this will all be given to you in an initial closing disclosure. Okay, so this isn't anything that you need to worry about. I'm just kind of telling you, we're going to run our digital underwriting, and within about 3 days, we're going to say, here's your initial closing disclosure. Some fees may change, like insurance, because the buyer wants to add flood insurance, or they want specific types of insurance, so it increases some costs. But this basically breaks down that your client in this scenario has to bring $11,500 for down payment, closing cost of that $7,500. The prepaid escrow is $2,700. So they need to bring $21,700 to closing or wire it before, that sort of thing. But they'll know this 3 days after we're like pretty early on, and it may adjust for the final disclosure, but it's normally pretty close. Okay. So I'm going to hit these. So mortgage options, there's fixed rate mortgages they're the most common. You can buy them in 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30-year options. Adjustable rate mortgages, there's different types of programs you can buy into to lower the interest rate for the first year or 2 or 5, whichever, type of ARM adjustable rate mortgage. If you hear the term ARM adjustable rate mortgage, I think that works for people who are moving, like say a doctor who's moving here for 2 years. Oh, they want to buy a house because they want to live in a certain area, but they know they're moving in 2 years. I think an ARM's a perfect option for things like that. So the first loan I'm going to hit, your conventional. Again, the loan amount is, and we'll talk, it goes up to $726,000 right now. That changes year to year. We talked about the terms, down payment as low as 3%. So again, if you pay anything on a conventional loan below 20%, you have to buy what? PMI. Good. That can be fixed. And then this talks about seller's contribution. So seller can contribute 3% with 95% financing. So the person's putting 5% down. The seller can contribute 3%. 6% with 90% financing, 9% with 75. Minimum score of 620. 620 has kind of been the magic number over the last couple of years since I've been doing this. 620 is kind of like you're going to get qualified at 620. It's on the lower end, but it should qualify. FHA loan, great loan. This is a government subsidized loan. Or guaranteed loan. It's good for new buyers because it allows them to put 3.5% down. And that it can be a gift. You can see that note there. Seller can contribute up to 6% closing costs. Max loan amount is $531,800 right now. So this is kind of the typical loan. This is a very common loan we do. So, for a first time home buyer, and it's a good option. 3.5% down is something reasonable for them, unless they are a ding, ding, ding veteran. So a VA loan, which I'll take you through here, and I will tell you that is me and my daughter when I came back from Afghanistan in 2014. So for eligible active duty members, what does eligible mean? Anybody but Doug? Okay, certificate eligibility, that's correct. What allows you to get a certificate eligibility? DD 214, perfect. And you said it right. That's right. And what's on the DD? All the DD my 214 says is all the awards I got, all the overseas service I did, and the magic stuff of honorable discharge. So if they had a dishonorable discharge, they're not going to be qualified. But majority of the people you can, but 0% down. There's the big win for all veterans.
And when it says eligible with the 2 asterisks.
That's what I was going through. You have to have honorable discharge. Yeah, and the DD 214, I just want to say, because eligible, not every veteran is eligible.
Okay, but the active duty.
Active duty, as long as they're active duty, that means, and they're not I think if they're flagged, like they're under court martial, type thing.
So any kind of discharge that doesn't have the word dishonorable on it
is good.
Is honorable.
Yeah.
Like medical discharges. For example.
Absolutely. Medical, any sort, like we call it chapter. You're chaptered out of the Army. That's just the chapter of the code, that chapter for medical, chapter for this. You're still going to be most likely honorable. Now, they're not going to show you that. So, but you can say, you got a DD 214, right? Yeah, absolutely. Cool. You'd ask cool questions like, where'd you serve? And this and that, or let me put you in touch with Kevin and I'll snuff them out in about 30 seconds. I'll know the questions to ask, like, when did you get out? How'd you get out? Not like the guy who crossed over into Korea 2 days ago.
I know that's
It's going to be a little nuts for him for a while.
We briefly touch on a way to ask them about any kind of disability.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, did you serve 20 is one question. A lot of times, most people who serve 20 are going to have some form of disability just because you get beat up. Oh, were you deployed? Man, I'd love to hear some more stories. And boy, if they want to talk about it, I don't very much, but if they do, and they'll tell you, and I got blown up once, or you see a scar on their neck and you make an assumption,
Or the other disability that you can't see.
Yeah, or PTSD. Yeah, exactly. So
I always like to ask, is there anything specific that you might need or you're looking for?
That's a good idea.
I feel like I've worked with a lot of VA buyers, some of them families, and then some of them just wanted like high-tech stuff in their
I mean-
house. And I mean, I feel like they worked in tech, but I never even asked. So I was like, I don't want to get into it. Maybe it's like secret service stuff, but I mean.
Yeah.
anyways, that's
I mean, I would even
like-
say, I don't think without, you can talk about what your VA rating is without getting personal.
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
all the time, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey,
Do you have any disability?
And if they say yes, I'm like, well, is it, what percentage?
Yeah, and I would-
100, they have no property taxes.
100% has no property taxes. That's right. And I'd say, do
It
you,
doesn't have to be visible. Most of the ones that I've worked with is PTSD.
Yeah.
I've never seen a physical, but
What
I
a
have
100%.
plenty that were 100%.
yeah, I mean, so do you have a disability rating? It's a good way to question that without getting personal. And if they do, they'll say, yeah, I'm at 90%. 90% gets 12% off their taxes. But if you get that magic 100, they get zero property tax for the rest of their life.
And they should.
Yep, that's right. That's
They-
right.
They can also waive the funding fee, right?
That's right. And they can waive funding fees. Good. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's
Wait,
correct.
what?
The funding fee.
So
Oh,
that's kind of like something, oh, we're gonna check, you know, you might qualify to waive the funding fee, right?
Mhm. Yep, that's right. That's right. And we'll be going through all those questions with them too, but good questions for you to ask in there. Those are pretty softball questions that aren't real super personal. USDA, I've had one of these that didn't go to closing, but I did learn a lot from it. Bottom line is you as a realtor, if you say, I want to do a USDA loan, all you got to do is go onto the USDA website. You need to know the address because they literally will take you to a map and show you where it qualifies for USDA. So there's two components of it. Does it qualify to be USDA by the government? And also there are income-based limits per county. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you what Rockwall County is. Just Google Rockwall County USDA limits and it'll give you a range of what the limit. If they make too much money, they're not qualified. It's to help those who don't have make that much money. But and if that is across the street outside of the rural area, it doesn't qualify. So there's a little bit of homework on that. But
And I think
again,
a lot of times a buyer will act like they know what they're talking about with the USDA,
mhm,
and it's better to just get them with Kevin as soon as
Yep.
possible, because it's like 70% of the median income. So if 50,000 or 40,000, you take 70% of 40,000, that's 28,000. If they make 28,000 and a penny, they don't qualify. So
yeah, I mean, they're hard to qualify for.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to hit a real sweet spot,
you
but
don't want to be writing up USDA loans and then find out that they don't
Yeah.
qualify. 'cause,
Yeah. we
you know,
won't let you get too far down that road.
Right, that's
Believe
why
me.
I get
Yeah.
it.
But if they say USDA, yeah, it's a little bit more challenging. So another reason, but it is 0% financing too. Jumbo loans, just think of the name is pretty easy. It's big money. You see that conforming loan part, that 726, 200, that's the conventional loan part. So the jumbo loan, it just requires different inputs, a higher credit score, a DTI max, you can see at 43%. And it requires a lot more funds after closing. So you got to show that you've got the money to repay that. Because, like, especially here in Dallas, there's plenty of jumbo loans in Dallas. Good Lord. Just touch on this because we're kind of at the end here, but there's non-qualified mortgages, credit score and like no income loans, foreign nationals, bank statement loans. These are all very obscure loans that will go through, but the credit score can go as low as 640. So it's still a little higher, if you look at that number, and it requires a larger down payment. So that sort of thing.
Hey, on the jumbo loan thing, just something I kind of learned
Yeah.
last year was I had a client who was VA and I was able to kind of use that as a negotiating tactic. I just shot straight with the builder and I was like, listen, we need to be under this amount on sales price so that it's not a jumbo loan for my VA client. And they actually moved for us and we got it. at
Oh, wow.
sales price. Yeah. Because I just told them like, it's not gonna happen. if you
Yeah.
can't do that. And they were like, okay, we'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
think the
it's kind
best,
of cool how you can find ways to lower it. you know?
the best thing about VA loans too is they know right up front exactly how much they can spend when they come to you. So if they can't exactly afford the house, they'll usually let you know, like, hey, my client's a VA, they have only I was listed at a house at 556, 448, random number. But when they came to me, they said, hey, I can only pay $548 with the. letter of
With the
eligibility."
certificate of
I
eligibility.
said, you know what, let me talk to them, and I was a buyer and a seller agent. I loved it.
Sometimes you can catch somebody and they'll be like, you know what?
I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's guaranteed
Oh, yeah,
and,
sure.
you know, the money, they have the exact amount and there's no negotiation back and forth. You're able to
You-
just kind of get.
You're a
ahead of
loan
them.
officer. No, it's good. I'm glad you brought that up because we kind of breezed over the COE. The COE, it tells you what that service member is qualified for, a certain amount of money. So you know they're blocked, like you're saying. You got the answers to the test, what they can afford, whether they've got more money or not. They're only eligible for X amount
Yeah.
at 0% financing.
Every money.
Okay, I hit on this and then I'm gonna, because I'm running out of time here. PMI, okay, it's a good thing, okay? Otherwise, your options are, oh, you want to buy a $200,000 house? Okay, how much do you owe me then for a down payment? 40,000. Like, I don't have 40,000. Well, you're not going to buy a house then. So PMI is a good thing. You know, this is kind of this interesting quick math. It takes a person 7 years to save 20% on a home loan. And, you know, the market's saying that it appreciates 3% a year. So you've missed 21% of appreciation not buying that home because you didn't have 20% down. So, and you saw in that one example, it's a relatively nominal amount. I mean, you're talking about, you know, you're going to pay $2,000 a month to rent or buy anyway, adding an extra 50, you're going to have one less pizza dinner that month, you know, but you own a home. Okay. Here's this cheat sheet I talked about. I'm not going to read you all the boxes, but I'll make sure that Doug's got it. So it kind of goes through each kind of loan, the down payment, the credit, the minimum credit score, seller contribution authorizations, some uniqueness type things, and then the max loan amounts. So use this, you know, stick it in your purse, in your wallet, take a picture of it. You know, it's a good little cheat sheet for you to know. And then my last final thoughts is, like I said, it's the no applicant, no loan application borrower market is the same. You know, I said it's a snowflake. Our job is to do everything for your client and to get the loan for you. So the earlier you contact us, the earlier we get involved, the more power we put in your hands to go close a loan. You know, and we kind of hit on it, but if you call us early and we get you pre-qualified, then you're ready to go buy a home and put a contract down at the time. Or you can go show houses for 3 straight weekends and then call me. And then I have the bad news to tell you that they're not going to qualify. And you've just wasted 3 weekends of your personal time and or showing a real buyer. So, you know, we're real good at closing at 21 days or less, which is huge. A lot, you know, that's can be very sensitive. You call, we've closed, the quickest one I've been a closing officer on was 15 days. So we can put it in high gear. Our team is really good at that. If, you know, things outside of our control, obviously. But look forward to doing business with you. The Mortgage Link is partnered up with DHS. Appreciate you giving me the time to share these thoughts and look forward to hearing from you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna end on a couple things. I'm gonna stop your deals.
Yep.
See.
I'm gonna stop share. I think I have to. There you
Oh,
go.
you're fine.
Do you also have a form like that one that you had with the boxes and things that has a list of all the things that they need to submit that we can have on hand too?
Meaning like W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns.
Usually when somebody reaches out to me
Yep.
to buy, immediately I'm asking them, you know, how much do you make? What do you do? How soon are you ready to buy? But I also want to be able to email them a sheet like, hey, pull all this stuff and I'm gonna give you the contact from my lender. And you can call them and just have all this stuff on hand because it'll just go right after
Yeah.
that.
So I don't personally have it on hand. I'm sure some of you do. When we do an application, the first thing, so I do phone call, we get them pre-qualified. They are now have an application. They immediately get emailed here's your laundry list of stuff. Yeah, I don't have it on hand, but if you have a card, I will slide out.
Yeah, I'll shoot you.
Yeah, shoot me an email and I will be glad to try to find something for you.
Cool. All right, couple things. We're doing our trainings now. We're always evolving our trainings, so we're doing them now every day at noon, Monday through Thursday at noon. We're gonna be doing every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, basically in order like buyer, seller, tenant, landlord. Fridays at noon will always be like this in person with food. All of them are Zoomed, all of them are the same link. And all of them are emailed to all the agents after I get the recording. And I also post them on GroupMe. So there's really no reason why we can't learn how to quickly work for a buyer, seller, tenant, landlord. A couple things in the news that I think are important to always know. Number one, what Kevin said, it's good to follow politics. A soldier went across the parallel and went in the DMV, went into North Korea the other day. That's news. Aretha Franklin died a couple shortly this year. She left a holographic will. And it just got a judge just ruled that it was valid. And so we cover that actually I cover it all the time. I tell you that I talk to a buyer about that when I close them. After we close and they make copies, I go, hey, it's a good idea, Shauna, to get a will. You never know what's going to happen. And, you put 20% down to avoid PMI. I remember you told me how much you saved and waited. You probably want to know that money's going to go to family members that you wanted to go to, because we don't always have, perfect families that we want to just have it go to. But a holographic will, a judge ruled that it was valid. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then I watch Fox Business all day long at home. When I'm at home, it's on mute. Today, they were talking about how CNBC said that Texas and Florida are the worst states to live in. And I just think it's kind of funny, like Texas and Florida have no sales tax. We're free states. Everybody moved to those two states during COVID. And it just shows you like how two channels could see an elephant get hit in the road and both could explain it a different way. When you would just say, as a common sense thinker, I go, the elephant just got fucking dead. He just got rolled. He just got run over. But you have two channels and it's two political philosophies. And I don't care about the politics, but what I don't want is to watch a show that's going to say Texas is one of the two worst states to live in. And then they just started going down everything that, Texas, that's good about Texas. And obviously the politics are always conservative in Texas. It's just historically, when Democrats ruled Texas, they were blue dog Democrats. If you know your history, they were conservative Democrats. So it's just a history of Texas that we've always been conservative. That doesn't mean that you have to abide by that, political theory. But what it does mean is that when they do property tax reform, they're going to do it to help homeowners, because generally speaking, a conservative government is going to try to protect homeowners. Where you look at California, where they're basically in bankruptcy because they don't even know how to properly tax their constituents that own homes. They got grandfather clauses. They got people that are freezed out. Yeah. Right.
You own a house from hundreds of years and the tax
Yep.
has been a certain amount, then you sell
Changes
it
as soon as you
somebody.
sell it. Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, but my point is simply that it's good to be informed about what's going on. I did sponsor the other day at Champions, and I always give out $20 bills when I do my class after I've already brought tacos. But I asked 3 questions that nobody knew. I said, Rangers are in first place as of today by how many games? Who did the Stars lose to in the playoffs? Nobody could get it. I finally said, which is weird that somebody got this one, but I said, there's recently a serial killer that was arrested in New York. Can you tell me the beach that they found remains of? It was Gilgo Beach. And one guy knew it, who was about my age, and he was a past. Yeah, but my point is that those are things that you can use to start rapport with a buyer. Where you, like, somebody says, oh, I'm from New York. And like, oh my God, it's crazy about that serial killer, right? Well, they're going to know about it. No, I'm just saying, I mean, if somebody says from Alaska, you don't have to pull it up, but Alaska, you could say, oh my God, I watch The Deadliest Catch all the time. Like, that's crazy. I'd vomit all the time on that boat. I mean, make a joke about it, but it's going to gain some rapport.
I don't know if I'd bring up serial killer.
I would.
Might spark a plug. What if they've killed 10 years ago?
Well, they did.
And
they were
bringing
fine.
up, and then you bringing up serial killer, you just.
Yeah, but I think you get my point. So anyways, and now one thing we have changed is our second Wednesday happy hours we've done away with because of the low turnout. And instead, every first month of each quarter, So January 1st,
April.
April 1st, July, and then October. So ending out the year, October, and it'll always be the first Saturday, we'll be doing an outdoor event is if weather permits. And we're gonna do October, it's the 7th, the Saturday, 6:30 at the truck yard in the Colony Grandscape. And it'll be drinks and food on the company. And then, of course, we have our pool, or not pool party, we have our Christmas party December 9th, and it's at Glen Eagles. And we just used actually sponsor money to pay that. And it's gonna be a nice venue, and it's expensive with 350 agents, but we're always using that money that the sponsors give us to do 2 nice events every year. And now it'll be 6 events, because we'll have 4 quarters of social events, and then our pool party and our Christmas party. So again, yeah, so we're available, Lola and I, and she might have something to end with. Never. Doesn't matter. I always, my wife's the only one that freaks out. Okay, well, what you got, Lola?
No, I don't.
Want to introduce some visitors?
I don't have too much to say. I always have something to say. We do have a visitor here, Shauna. She is from Champions. Doug and I went to Champions on Monday. Doug took a class, I took another class. So I win because
Yeah,
I actually got someone to come and he did.
That's right.
So I feel good, and I didn't have no money to bribe anyone.
Right.
So, I feel really good about that. So welcome. Thank you for coming. We have Ariel. I don't know if everyone knows Ariel, but she's from Rogers Healy and she's been with DHS for a while. I think you guys should reach out to her. She's got some good information. She did an open house for me, and she did lose all my open house signs, but I still love her. Still love her.
Will come and pick up
I told her this, and
you can see them.
and so they were gone by the time the open house was done, but again, still go out there and do those open houses.
Yeah.
I just read on GroupMe, Dustin, got a client from doing open houses. So it's definitely possible. You just have to keep going at it. Same thing with TikTok. If you are constantly posting, whether it's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, you will eventually get a client from that social media platform. You guys just, all I can ask you to do is read. I'm here to help. I'm not here to do the work for you. I'm gonna say that again. I am here to help. I am not here to do the work for you. So if you call me and ask me a question, if you don't like my response, it's probably because you're asking me to do it for you and you're not trying to do it yourself. So with all that being said, please don't hesitate. I'm always awake. I'm always ready to help. And so is Doug. Yes, Ms.
So
Patricia.
have you seen any improvement? I like what you said to the group about GroupMe in terms of how it should be used. Remember?
Okay.
Have you seen any improvement in that?
I haven't really seen any improvement, but I haven't seen anything to see if there is improvement.
Okay.
But I'll reiterate this again. GroupMe is for visitors. It is for important information. So let's say after training, Kevin posts in GroupMe, hey, whoever wants the slides from today's training, please send me your email. Please do not send your emails in GroupMe because it just creates 50 emails or 100, and someone like Shauna, who is not with DHS, but wants to see how we interact with each other. Like Baja just threw something out. I need a co-listing for our property. I mean, that's good. We have an agent who is asking someone in GroupMe to assist her in a listing. So there'll be 2 agents on 1 listing. So these are the things I would like for visitors to see instead of us going back and forth. Like we could get on the phone or, I mean, and another thing, if I post, if you want to do an open house, please text me. Do not say I can do it in GroupMe. Okay? The person leaves their phone number for you to text them. Do not respond in GroupMe with your own phone number. Okay? It's just, y'all, we gotta think with some common sense here. I mean, I'm just gonna be straight up,
Yeah.
okay?
No, I think that's
I
great.
think that's it.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think some of the questions that Lola's talking about that I get are, I had an agent last week, they got the release of earnest money signed by both parties. And then simply asked me, do I need to text this to the title company? And so I said, what do you think? And then they sent this crying emoji, yes, and I was like, that's correct. I was like, well, what's good of the, what is the good of the release earnest money if you don't send it to the entity that has the earnest money? Yeah, so, be like saying, hey, the seller just agreed to pay 10,000 in closing costs. Should I let Kevin know? I'm like, yes. So, but I mean, I don't get as curt as Lola, but that's why I love her. But I will do things like, well, what do you think? But I want us to think, and that way the question doesn't come up. And a question I get a lot is every newsletter that goes out, if you scroll down, it's got a blue sheet of paper, and right after it's got some phone numbers. And I've said so many times, like, put all that crap on your phone. And I'll get people that'll ask me like, what's Brooke's number? And I'm like, go to the newsletter, scroll down. But by them doing it, instead of me just giving it to them, now they have it for life. And I think our goal is that we want you to fish on your own. We might be in the boat, obviously, for the first throws, but I mean, at some point you got to feed yourself. And then you become fisher of other agents, where almost like in the Bible, fisher of men, where you're like Ariel helping Dave. I mean, Lindsay, everybody in here has helped somebody. And that's what we have here, is we have people that help others. And if you, yeah. So anyways, but that's it. And thanks Kelton and Elaine and iPhone user. Don't know who